I recently came across a term, conspirituality. I don't know how many have heard of it. It's a term that looks at the coming together of the spiritual community and the conspiracy theory community. Over the last couple of months, what I've noticed is in the feeds of people who I would normally say are kind of quite deeply spiritual, all manner of theories have been coming up, from the earth is punishing us for this via the virus, for everything we've done on earth, to the lockdown is a cover-up for Donald Trump's fight against the deep state, to Bill Gates is wanting to vaccinate us all and kill us with chips inserted in us to track our every movement, and the fact that our human rights are being taken away. Now, I'm not in a position to really comment on that. It's and say whether this is true or not. I've just noticed over the last couple of months, and now there's a term for it, of how the conspiracy theory community and the spiritual community seem to be coming together. And it was probably nowhere more evident than the Brian Rose and David Icke series of interviews that happened over the last couple of months. And what I found is the spiritual community seems to be kind of taking this kind of bunker mentality of we're all kind of starting to bunker down for the inevitable conflict that's going to happen as our rights are taken away and what have you. And what I found is that the feeds of a lot of my friends have changed, and I've learned a lot about conspiracy theories over the last couple of months. But what's really been interesting to me is how there's been such changes in emotion over the last couple of months. And myself personally, what I found is at the beginning it was all rather intriguing. And if I'm honest, who doesn't love a great conspiracy theory? I do remember reading the books of David Icke back in the day, and they'd always end with yes, and that's because everybody in the world who's ruling the world is lizards. And there was a grain of truth in there. I won't deny that, but at the same time, some of the stuff was really far-fetched. And what I'm seeing in the spiritual community now is that we seem to be going into more and more separation and creating this idea of them and us. In other words, we're falling into the kind of very trap that we're trying to avoid, and that is that we're now kind of going into groups. We've seen over the last couple of months Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, QAnon, those people saying, the vegans saying the carnivores are responsible for this, the carnivores saying no, it's the vegans, and we're seeing an increasing polarization in the world. And I kind of wonder where spirituality can really help with that, because I've always said in my talks that if you look at some of the teachers of old and if you look at some of the speakers of old, they functioned in their communities almost as social workers, so that you could go to see them if you had a problem with, say, I don't know, the cow wasn't giving enough milk, or the son wasn't getting a job, or the business was failing, right down to the fact that if you were poor and you had nowhere to stay, you could go there and get a bed for the night, or even just get a warm meal. And in that sense, I feel that the spirituality of the past was probably a bit more practical than what we're seeing now. Over the last couple of months, and I've kind of pretty much resisted this, we've seen droves of teachers who've just gone online and started Zoom meetings every single day, and now we have Zoom fatigue because he's on and then she's on and everything, and there's nothing inherently wrong in that, but I do feel that it's been a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. And I think this is a time really for the spiritual community to really look at some of the emotions they're feeling and look at some of the information that's being digested, because as I said, I've no doubt that there is a grain of truth in what's being said, but what I'm finding is it's creating this fear mentality, and we already are experiencing a lot of fear with this unprecedented once-in-a-lifetime event, which no doubt has traumatized society to such an extent that I don't think we'll see the full effects of this until years from now. Economically, politically, even spiritually, so many of our ideas have been tested. So many of our cherished beliefs have been seen to be redundant because, I've talked about spiritual bypassing in the community, and, I've found that the spiritual community, which I feel spirituality to me is a practical reality that governs every moment of your existence, has fallen short and kind of got caught up in this popular wave of conspiracy theories. And like I said, I'm sure there's a grain of truth in there. What I'd like to kind of talk about really is the reactions that have happened in our community and how I don't feel we've really kind of come out and really looked at this. To me, spirituality is kind of recognizing that the other is also you, and recognizing the inherent oneness of us all. So to me, it's really about bringing together, and I've found that people are being increasingly polarized into their opinions, and it's creating a them and us mentality, which can only really, in the longer term, not really benefit us as we become even more separated. The lockdown has managed to physically separate us, and now what we're doing is we seem to be separating on ideas, and the separation is running deeper to the point where it is becoming a them and us mentality. I heard a story the other day about a young child whose mother was telling me that, prior to the lockdown, he was always out and about with his friends. He was always engaged in all these different physical activities. And ever since the lockdown has happened, he's now not wanting to go out. He's content to sit at home and play on his Xbox, and is content to meet his friends, via the Xbox. What was really interesting was his mother also narrated a story of recently. The schools have got bubbles now of pupils, so they're all staggered. They come in, and one of his best friends isn't in that bubble, and accidentally one day, the two bubbles collided, and this young child managed to meet his friend. And the friend's mother rang up the child's mother and said, look, he was so happy to see his friend after such a long time. And I thought to myself, is this the way forward now? Is this our new normal? Is this our future, where we are increasingly being separated for supposedly our own benefits? And if this is the case, what then is spirituality as a practical reality doing about this? A very famous Sufi, Ali Hajweri, who I've quoted on numerous occasions, stated, a reality with no name has now become a name with no reality. And it is starting to feel to myself and no doubt others that the spiritual community is a name with no reality, because we're wanting to defend ludicrous ideas, and we're wanting to all look right and sound right and act right. And here we have an opportunity to create a revolution within ourselves and within society by authentically meeting ourselves and living in this very practical reality that spirituality is. There's that old Buddhist saying of, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water, and after enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. Why then have we forgotten that very practical element of spirituality, that it is this moment, this spirituality, this being here and now is the answer to everything, because it lies at the very core of all existence. And its so-called custodians seem content to either be carried away with conspiracy theories that can either be validated or not validated, and are content to help spread this fear, because people are panicking when they hear this. People are in fear when they hear this. I remember being in Devon when the lockdown started, and somebody had put up a joke post about the army coming out onto the streets, and I read part of the post, and I remember this feeling of fear. It just hit me until I read the rest of the post, and I thought, why would you do that? what was really interesting then was that I went out to the sea just to collect my thoughts, and there's this huge warship, and all manner of emotions started coming up. And what we're finding is that this pandemic is bringing up all manner of emotions. And maybe what we should be looking to do is helping people to manage those emotions and to use those emotions to see the transient nature of those emotions in order for us to see what is real and what is really our natural state, as opposed to this transient feelings that we're holding on to at this moment in time, which is just perpetuating more fear, more trauma, more anxiety, more panic. As I said in my last video, talking to an ambulance driver recently, said that the number one thing that they're being called out for now is panic attacks and anxiety from people who've never felt this. And I myself am seeing the lid come off a lot of people who have been very numb to what's happening in the world. And this fear that everything is bringing up now is now bringing people into questioning their very reality. And it's an opportunity for the spiritual community, instead of getting involved in conspiracy theories, to actively go out, as I've said in my last video, into the communities and actually speak to people and actually allow their presence to permeate what's going on around people, so people can recognize themselves. Because, like I said, I'm not saying that the conspiracy theories are wrong, but they do create a mentality where, very similar to spiritual bypassing, we can blame somebody else for our problems. As I said in my previous video about spiritual bypassing, sometimes we can use these beautiful esoteric concepts to not look at what's actually happening in our lives. And in that sense, we don't grow. In that sense, we don't realize who we really are, because we stand at the edge of the abyss with our pointer, believing our pointer is everything, knowing that we need to let it go, but we have that fear, we don't let it go. And we can have a similar situation happen with these conspiracy theories as well, in that we can use these conspiracy theories to blame somebody else and not look at our own reactions. And I think this is where we need to take ownership of our lives and our communities and of who we are. And if we engage in this conspirituality and are constantly looking to blame others, instead of looking to do what we can do, because I must confess, as I started going further and further down the rabbit hole over the last couple of months, one of the predominant emotions that came up was, well, this is all going to happen anyway, and what can I possibly do? And I found that was really disempowering. And I think, as I've said, there is a grain of truth there, but I think the spiritual community needs to look at its reaction, because this could quite easily become our new version of spiritually bypassing, by blaming the other. That somebody in some tower or some death cult somewhere is controlling our very being. We are responsible for our reactions to this. And we are also fully aware on what we've read and on what we've seen, that at any moment a personal revolution can occur in us that can awaken us to our true nature. So maybe we should be using everything that's happening to really bring it up as a mirror to us. And this is a mirror in which we get to see ourselves. And what we will find is either what we are following is real and authentic, and it is a reality with no name, or that we're in fact following a name with no reality, whereby we are invested in our form and we are invested in our pomp and circumstances and our fanciful terms and our beautiful rituals, but ultimately they are dead and mean absolutely nothing. So we have a choice. We can either use this opportunity to realize who we actually are and live in this natural way of being, which is practical, alive, ever fresh and ever new, and not static and crystallized as some of the teachings of the past have been. Or we can slavishly follow our dogmas and our concepts, believing that what's better than what we've got. And we can be oblivious and blind to what's actually happening to us. As I've said in previous videos, this pandemic is a once in a lifetime event, and it's brought up all manner of emotions, and society has been traumatized beyond belief. And I believe as we're going through it, we're not going to fully understand the impact it's having on us at this moment in time. And I think further down the line, we will see an increase in mental health issues. We will see an increase in depression and anxiety. And it will be interesting to see what the reaction of society and what the reaction of those who profess to live in this practical reality will be, or those who profess to be of a spiritual nature. Because in this inherent oneness, why are we now reinforcing this them and us mentality?